The following episode contains details of an attempted suicide. If you or someone you know has had thoughts of suicide or expressed thoughts of suicide, please do not hesitate to call the Suicide Prevention Hotline by dialing 988, or you can text TX to 741-741. There are counselors standing by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are also counselors who speak Spanish. Listeners' discretion is advised.
What do you do when life takes you to the brink of despair, yet you find the strength to rise and transform not only your own life, but the lives of others? On this episode, I have Derek Newborn joining me on LifeJack, the Resilience Podcast. As a single father from Florida and a highly regarded personal trainer, Derek has turned his own tumultuous journey into a powerful mission. After reaching the pinnacle of success as a fitness model, he faced the darkness of self-destruction and near-fatal choices. However, instead of succumbing to that darkness, he chose to confront it head-on, dedicating his life to helping others break free from the chains of narcissistic relationships through his innovative programs, the Metabolism Rev-Up, and the empowering divorce community, spelled out D.I.V.O.R.C.E.D. Their story is a testament to resilience, healing, and the undeniable power of self-ownership.
Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were life-jacked.
Hi, Derek. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. How are you?
I'm doing great and super excited to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, no, most definitely. So now, Derek, for the listeners who may not know who you are, can you share a bit about your journey from personal trainer and fitness model to now transformation coach and the challenges that have come with this transition?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, pretty lucky, fortunate, and successful in the fitness world as far as my personal training business and full-time model. And I was one of those people that on the outside looked like everything was great, had great relationships, had successful business, but on the inside I was battling massive depression and unhealed abandonment issues from childhood. And so essentially from the abandonment issues, since they were never healed, I was constantly trying to avoid being abandoned like I had experienced early on in my life. And so my way to avoid it was a lot of lying, cheating in my relationships, and essentially just using people for my own good because I assumed that they would abandon me at some point no matter what I did. And obviously that cycle is not a very good cycle to be in, and people around you can only take so much of that. And it essentially got to the point that, you know, everybody had to walk away from me because I had destroyed relationships, destroyed my character and trust with anybody and everybody that I loved. And then that just packed on even more depression. And before I knew it, I had attempted suicide. And that was what led me to rock bottom. And it's from that rock bottom that I was able to rebuild myself from the very lowest point I could be. And that's how I started to rebuild and really understand what self-sabotage looks like, what unhealed trauma looks like, and how it affects us in a great way that we're not really aware of. And so that was the start of my journey, was me getting to rock bottom.
And so I had to ask you, did you always know that you had these abandonment issues, or was there some revelation and you realized, wow, I believe I have abandonment issues?
Yeah, I didn't realize them for most of my life. I know I had experienced some things that weren't normal. But again, when I was in this period and I was doing all this self-sabotaging, this narcissistic behavior, like, specifically with cheating and stuff, like me doing those things, it still wasn't making me feel good. And so I was really struggling with, why am I doing these things if it's not giving me the result I want? And so it wasn't until I got rock bottom that I had to take a hard look at myself and figure out what was the reasoning behind this self-destruction, when essentially I had achieved everything that I wanted in my life in every aspect up to that point. And so when I was at rock bottom, I realized that the only common denominator in all this turmoil and all this pain and destruction was myself. Prior to that, I would blame my girlfriend or other people or whatever it may be, but then the reality was I was the common denominator in it all. So then I just had to go on this transparent self-discovery journey, and I started rewinding my life essentially in reverse, and realized that abandonment had really shown up from the age of 7 all the way to my late 20s. And it was the last issue was in my 20s when I got a divorce, and essentially that was like my mental breaking straw of never being abandoned again. So I was essentially subconsciously, I just said, I'm going to start looking out for myself. I don't care about anybody else, because I already know how everybody else operates. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm taken care of at the dispense of others. So throughout my life, I wasn't aware of it. And then from rock bottom, when I realized, hey, you're the one that's causing all this, so you better figure out why, because if you keep going down this road, you already see how it's probably going to end.
It's interesting at the time. I mean, you have valid reasons for why you kind of put this hard shell around yourself of protection, because no one wants to be abandoned, right? That's not an abnormal
right. Yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm all right with being abandoned. I mean, no one needs social creature.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's interesting, though, how those types of feelings can kind of manifest themselves in our lives. And it's very interesting how it can play out.
In my story, the self-abandonment caused me to, do the lying and cheating, but also show up in, people staying in terrible relationships or abusive relationships because they don't want to be abandoned, or, the way they take care of themselves because they don't want to be abandoned. So, the side effects of the trauma can vary from person to person also.
Wow, most definitely. Now, you mentioned earlier that you had hit a personal rock bottom, and in that personal rock bottom for you was attempting to commit suicide. But luckily, you did not succeed, obviously, because you're here having this conversation. So what a blessing. But can you describe, how did you come out from that? Because there are a lot of listeners and a lot of people that find this podcast because it's about resilience, right? And, your life has just been jacked by whatever it is, whether it's something really big, and sometimes they're just minor things that end up just piling up. But you came out on the other side. So what was that experience like, and what exactly was the motivation for you to change?
I mean, again, I was at rock bottom, place I'd never been, and things were very scary and unsafe. And like I said, I knew that I was the common denominator of it. And I just knew in my spirit, in my soul, that I was not put on this earth to create that kind of negative influence and that kind of self-destruction. And when I realized that I was the common denominator, well, that just meant that I've been in control of my life this whole time, and I've just happened to go the wrong way. So as of right now, I still have control of my life, and I'm still the most common denominator. So there's got to be a way for me to use this control that I have over my life to create the actual life that I want from this moment forward. And that gave me just the first ounce of hope of You're still in control of your life. You've never lost control of your life. You've just gone the wrong direction, but you've already proven that you can create what you want because I created the success. But I also, at the end of the day, my greatest fear of abandonment is essentially what I created from the self-sabotage. So I had all this evidence that I'm able to create whatever kind of life that I want. And so that's what kind of got me at least facing the right direction, then figuring out, all right, now how do I go to this direction where I start experiencing this type of life? And that's what started. That's essentially what started the transition.
Now you have this community, which is called the Divorced community. Now, does divorce, does each of the initials, does it stand for anything?
Yeah, so it's an acronym. So discover your true worth, ignite your inner strength, visualize the life you deserve, overcome self-doubt, reclaim your confidence, commit to your personal growth, empower yourself daily, and define your new path forward. And so that's what the acronym DIVORCE stands for. And it's more than just divorce when it comes to marriage. It's also very much about divorcing that past version of yourself, divorcing those old limited beliefs, divorcing old behaviors and patterns. And so it's really about how to separate essentially from the things that no longer define you. And so I built a private container where men and women can come in and kind of go through the journey of how to divorce whatever it is that they're trying to remove.
I really love that you said it's not just about divorce in the meaning, in the sense of like what we know of. You know, you get married and then you get divorced. But I really love how you said that sometimes you're divorcing other things, like you said, because really when you are with these vices, they are relationships you have, where the drugs,
very
alcohol,
true.
Sex, whatever, eating, whatever it may be, you form this relationship with these addictions or these threats almost to your life, right? So I love that.
100%.
Yes. So we have actually married people that are in it, and they're just there to divorce like old limited beliefs or old childhood trauma. So it's about all that. Man. So within the divorce community, so how exactly does it help women and men? Because I'm sure it's not just for women, it's for men as well. How does it help them reclaim their self-worth and confidence?
Yeah, so essentially they go through a step-by-step process of, just like the acronym says, first you have to start like discovering your true worth. Like why are you here? And essentially the way you discover that is kind of like the same thing I did. You have to reverse going back through your life and discovering where the challenges are in your life, because where the challenges are in your life, on the other side of those challenges are where your gifts are, where your true worth, what your true worth is actually attached to, and your purpose on this earth. And so you go through a step-by-step process. So whether it be a specific workshop, or whether it be some journal prompts or some visualization process, it's essentially everything that I've used to get to this part, just broken down in a step-by-step process that you can go on at your own speed.
Oh, that's awesome. Because really, you do need a program that you can do at your own speed, right? Because one thing I've realized about change is that you won't change until you want to, and you only change at the rate that you want to. So I love that.
Yeah.
I really love that.
Yeah, that's why I created. So it's something that you can go at your own speed, because everybody's journey is different, and not everybody's journey takes the same amount of time.
No, absolutely. That's what I wonder about some of the programs out there. And I mean, no shot at any of the programs, because I'm sure they are great. People put a lot of thought and time into them. But, you know, everybody, like you said, is at their own rate, their own speed on their recovery process. And, you know, I think it is an individual process, and it can't be rushed. And it does be in your own time. So you've talked about the importance of shadow work in your healing process. I mean, what is that? I mean, is it just you're looking at your shadow, or what's going on with that?
Just go stand by the sun and look at your shadow. No,
no.
So shadow work is, the shadow is essentially that aspect of your of your life, of your personality that we don't really want to acknowledge, or like our conscious ego doesn't really acknowledge it. And it's the shadow is essentially that unknown side of us. So like for me, it was essentially childhood Derek that got abandoned at 7, that stuck around, that lived out of fear, right? And so it's that like other version of us that we create the moment we first experience trauma, whether it be getting rejected or embarrassed by our own actions or mistreated or abused. And so if we can address our shadow and just acknowledge it for what it is, then we can start to use it to help us grow and start to truly understand who we are, why we do things, and what we want out of life. Because it's usually, we keep it hidden. And it's also blocking our energy, it's limiting our beliefs. And so when you learn how to integrate that shadow into you and essentially become friends with it, you can start to let go of whatever be the shame, the embarrassment, essentially those parts that are unhealed and those parts that we tend to hide. But most of us since it's attached to trauma, we're pretty scared to face it because it's so painful or it has so much power over us. But if we can learn how to face it, have conversations with it, and address it, it's one of the most powerful things that can set us free from anything that's holding us back.
Yeah, I know it's amazing when you discover things that are holding you back, and then once you realize those things that are holding you back, like you mentioned earlier about the self-sabotage or, the things that are infiltrating and ruining your relationships, have you found that it's just really an enlightening process?
Yeah, 100%. Because once you come in contact with it, it essentially is going to show you and highlight where you feel, again, whether you feel rejected or abandoned. It's also going to show you why you do a lot of these things that you do that don't feel good, the self-sabotage and all that. And it's essentially you're making friends with your inner critic, and you're starting to listen to your inner critic, and then you can start to help that inner critic understand why it's safe to let go of these things. And then so essentially this one thing that we've been avoiding all our life, we become friends with it. And we start letting it help us guide us instead of pretending it's not there. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Now, one of the things that I believe is always a misconception about people who are resilient, people assume that it is a solo journey, right? That it's a solo activity that, no, I'm strong because I have to do it on my own. And we find out, right, that's really not true.
That's not how it works.
Actually, a form of weakness is actually trying to do it all by yourself. So,
I was just about to say that, yeah.
Right. So, for you, how important has your support system been, and who exactly is in your support system?
Yeah, so I have a huge support system in the sense of like once I started to go on this new path, I literally just tried everything from like church related retreats. I went to like couples retreats as a single person. I've traveled all over to all these retreats, and the biggest support system I had and still do is my life coach, whose name is Reggie McKeever. And essentially, he's helped me because he's essentially somebody that has gone through what I've gone through and came out the other side. And before, like I tried traditional therapy and all that stuff. And the biggest support I can get is to understand that like whatever I've done or created, I'm not the only person in this world that's done it. And there's people that have come out the other side to where I want to be. And so having that support system really helps you. It helps me to like just be able to breathe a little more, knowing that this person has been to where I want to go, and they've come back to help me through the exact process. And that's essentially what I do as well. So if you don't have a support system, you feel like you're all alone. You feel like you got to figure it out yourself. You feel like no one understands what you're going through, or nobody can see what you're trying to do. So without a support system, it's a very long, dark journey.
Now, you emphasize the concept of extreme ownership. So can you elaborate, like, what exactly does that mean to you, and how is it related to building resilience?
Yeah, so extreme ownership is essentially what I had to take on, in the sense of, like I talked about when I was at rock bottom. I understood that the common denominator in my life was me. And so what that meant from that point is I have to take ownership of all the good things I've done and all the bad things that I've done. I have to take ownership of them, because once I have ownership of them, then nobody else dictates my life, because you can't tell me anything that I don't already know about myself, right? And when I faced it, that also helps me with triggers of somebody's comments or somebody's perception of me. If I have ownership of all the terrible things I've done, you can't use them against me. And so it just gives me a stronger foundation to say, yes, I did A, B, or C, good, bad, the same, whatever. And then I'm in full control of my life from that moment forward. So also extreme ownership allows you to apologize to people. It allows you to forgive people. It allows you to make decisions for yourself, not decisions based on what you think somebody else wants to hear or somebody else wants you to do. So the ownership really puts you in the driver's seat of your life, because if you don't take ownership of every aspect of your life, you'll always be dictated by somebody else's beliefs of you or somebody else's opinions of you. So it's kind of like extreme ownership is adding gasoline to the fire of healing, is having extreme ownership. And that makes building resilience a lot, I wouldn't say easier, but maybe more streamlined, because when you have extreme ownership and you're starting to rediscover yourself and starting to rediscover life again, and you start saying, oh, I want to do this, or I want to try this, and you try it, and it might be too much at that time and you freak out, but you have the resilience because you know who you are, because you have ownership of your life. Whereas maybe if you try something new and you don't quite have that ownership, you freak out, and then somebody reminds you of something you did in the past, and now you don't have any resilience because you don't have the ownership. So ownership and resilience kind of go hand in hand. The ownership is what will help you build resilience.
I mean, do you have a special trick for ownership of the bad? Because I know it's quite easy to take ownership of the good, but I don't know if I really want to be that exposing and vulnerable to think about the bad.
Yeah, it's not taking ownership of the bad just to remind yourself of the bad. It's part of the journey of, I did these things that I'm not proud of, but I know exactly why I did them, which doesn't make them right or valid, but I have a clear understanding of why I did these things. And so I did these things because A, B, and C, because of abandonment issues. And so it also helps with helping others, because I can have transparent conversations with anybody about any aspect of my life, because I'm not trying to hide anything, nor am I trying to make excuses. I'm just able to simply state my experiences. And when you realize that most of the things that we do that we're not proud of or that we try to hide, again, whatever our challenges are, on the opposite of those things is where our truth lies, where our purpose lies. So the quicker we get through the weeds of all the bad stuff, the quicker we get to spiritual alignment and living life as free as possible, that most people don't ever get to experience because they don't get through the shadow part, or they have too much guilt and shame or unhealed trauma. So extreme ownership is just saying, like, here's what's in my toolbox. This is what I've got to work with.
Now, looking back on your journey, what advice would you give to someone who feels trapped in a cycle of self-destruction or toxic relationships?
The first thing I would say is get help in some way, shape, or form. You have to be able to express to somebody. You have to be able to talk to somebody. And like that was a huge problem for me. I wish I had somebody that I could have just spoke to and be like, this is what I got going on. But, you know, like in the height of my modeling career and all that, if I just mentioned that, hey, I'm feeling a little depressed, everybody was like, what do you got to be depressed about? And then that just made me feel worse. And so if you find somebody to talk to, just start with a traditional therapist, and like I did, and just start going from there. But it's also why I created my programs for people to come and be able to say things or say what's going on, because we are not interested in dwelling on the issues. We're only interested in getting you where you want to go, no matter what's transpired or what you have going on. And so the first thing is just reach out to somebody and just get a sounding board, and then you can kind of start to navigate, like I did, what direction makes most sense when it comes to having a support system.
So in your opinion, what is the best way to build resilience?
The best way to build resilience is to lean into the uncomfortable and face what you fear the most. That's the only way you build resilience, right? We don't build resilience when everything's good.
I like that.
At least I don't.
No, I understand. Lean into the uncomfortable. Yeah, because as I've learned, your brain, keeps you safe. Your brain is not going to
exactly
to face those fears head on. They're going to say, no. Mm-hmm. We're scared of that. So let's just feel safe and what we feel comfortable doing. So yeah.
Whatever cave we're scared to go into, that's the cave that has the biggest treasure waiting for us. That's the way I look at it.
I love that. You hear that, listeners? The biggest cave that we're scared to go into is the one that holds the best treasure. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, I can't even believe the time is up, but thank you, Derek, for sharing your incredible journey on the show. Your story of resilience and transformation is truly inspiring, and it serves as a powerful reminder that it's never too late to turn your life around. So how can listeners find and connect with you, or perhaps become a part of the divorce community?
Yeah, easiest way is DerekNewborn.com. Instagram's Derek Newborn. Facebook is Derek Newborn. And I encourage anybody just to shoot me a message on social media and keep it super casual and organic in my DMs. So do not hesitate to reach out in any way, shape, or form. But if you just type in Derek Newborn on any of social media, I'll pop up.
Any last words of encouragement for the listeners?
This is just a reminder. Every day that you wake up, you have a chance to make a choice to make a change.
Derek, I truly appreciate the work that you're doing through the divorce community and your commitment to helping others find their strength and reclaim their lives. I look forward to seeing how your message continues to empower. I wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance. Please take care.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on and letting me share my story. Thank you.
Derek Newborn, everyone. Be sure to join me next time for more uplifting stories and insights on resilience. Until then, keep pushing forward, embrace the journey, and remember that every setback can lead to a greater comeback. Dr. Rowe, signing off.